All right, guys, Coach Nate here with the Running Experience. We are here with Dr. Kelly Starrett of the Ready State and
Tree Triss.
And you are going to help me out with a better sense of what runners can do to resolve injury. What are like the couple steps that they should be following every single time to get through that process?
Well, let's even hit the brakes for a second and say, if you're injured, you're being managed by someone, right? How do I know I'm injured? Can't run anymore. That's why I think you're injured, right? If you can run and it's painful, but you can run, you're not injured. You just have pain. You might not even have tissue trauma or micro injury, right? Some reason you become sensitized. So on this side of that wall, and look, let's be clear. Night sweats, dizziness, fever, vomiting, nausea, unaccounted for weight loss and weight gain, changes in bladder bowel function. These are all signs of pathology that you need to go see a doctor for, right?
Those are all major things.
Those are major things. If it's not tissue trauma, one of those things, I suspect you have the right to take a crack at fixing it yourself. And that's where we have just sold out runners. We're like, nope, can't be your body. It must be your sports shake and it must be your shoe. And like we have just said, hey, here's 1/3 of the puzzle. Let's talk about your body. So if you're experiencing discomfort, whatever that is, right? Let's say pain is a common experience, but it could be lack of range of motion, it could be loss of force. There's a lot of things that can happen. The first thing we want to say is, especially if it's around pain, is there something you can do to desensitize that tissue? Because for whatever reason, your brain is perceiving that as a threat. So pain doesn't actually originate in the tissues. Your brain just perceives the signal as pain. That's all it is. So if we can change something around this system locally, change a mechanic, change blood flow, unload it a little bit, then your brain's like, oh, not a threat, walks away. Right?
So runners try to manage their pain all the time, and they usually do it with ice or Advil.
Or whiskey, or Advil, ice. Right?
Well, let's leave whiskey alone, but let's talk about these other things.
Well, you know what we see is that people are very reasonable. I have pain. How do I manage my pain, right? And what we've told everyone forever is, oh yeah, ibuprofen is a solution, and it's a temporary solution. Look, if we're racing for the love of a beautiful woman and millions of dollars, I'm going to be like, take that ibuprofen and get your butt out there and let's do this, right?
Yeah.
But that's not all of us, right? And that's definitely not the training experience. Working with a world-class cyclist right now who called me up the other day and said, hey, I'm putting 47% of my force through my left foot and 53% through my right leg. We've got to fix that. And I was like, can you imagine if every runner was like, hey, I think my ground reaction time is this and my foot, that's the level of detail at the top, right? That's enough for her to be like, hey, let's fix this. For us, what often happens is that for some reason we get a signal from our tissues that we need to pay attention. And I can be stressed, I can be poorly slept, I can have poor nutrition, I could just not have moved or warmed up very much, I could have congested tissues that are just, I didn't recover from a bad run, a really brutal run the next day, right? Any one of those things is enough to become a sensitizing agent. So suddenly my brain has become sensitized. Even my ability to have a threshold, like you deal with a lot of pain, it's gonna take a lot to poke through your thick bare skin, right? You know what I mean? So, but some of us are way more sensitive. The Olympic sprinters I work with are like, ooh, this thing right here doesn't feel good, right? They're very like, oh, something's wrong. Like nothing's wrong with your leg. They're like, this area is, something doesn't feel right. So we get the spectrum, and it doesn't matter where you fall on that spectrum, we believe you, right? This is, and what you're getting is information. So first in order is, what can I do to desensitize myself? So very simple tools out there like gua sha, a little scraping with a spatula. Sometimes just taking a rubber spatula and rubbing a painful site for a minute or so in each direction with a little lotion, that can be enough to just change some blood flow, desensitize an area, right? That's called gua sha. We have been doing that for thousands of years. Scraping, right? How about this? You can get on a tissue. So let's say this is my calf.
Actually, some of you runners out there may have seen things like the sidekick tool is something that's out there that a lot of runners are using.
That's right, and that we love that as not a tool to improve performance, but a great way to desensitize. Right? If you try to look at your muscles, there's too many muscles to scrape. the whole time. That's gonna be a full-time job. But if I have an area that hurts, I could go above it or below it, maybe feed it some slack, right? So our first order of business is desensitization. So scraping is easy. Go just rub it out a little bit. Put some blood flow in there.
Yeah.
How about some non-threatening input, right? Just me. If you ever hurt yourself,
that feels nice.
Right? Like you're like, ooh, you rub it.
Yep.
Right? That's blocking the brain from hearing what's going on in the tissue. You see someone fall really bad and they get up and run away. Like that running is hiding the fact that they are getting pain signals in that moment, right? Oh, I hit my hand and shake it out.
Shake it out.
So
yeah.
Desensitizing is a really simple way of saying, hey, let's change how the brain is perceiving this. Doing contract and relax, any of the soft tissue work that you teach through the TRE, that is a great way of desensitizing a painful myofascial system. So if I'm having knee pain, very common for runners to have knee pain here or maybe in the kneecap, if I lay on that roller, contract, and then relax slowly, that may be enough to take my brain and desensitize that problem, right? I may or may not be changing my range of motion, you probably are, but you're improving the system and more importantly, getting some input into that sensitized tissue that says, everything's cool here. Like, you're freaking out and someone walks into the room and is like, it's cool, we got this. And you're like, okay, I'll chill, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. So first order of business is to desensitize.
Okay.
And any way you want to do that is fine. All the trigger point guns and the guns and vibration tools, those are all desensitization tools, right? I feel stiff.
I was wondering what those things did.
I feel stiff. I put it on my body. I feel better. Let's go, right?
Okay.
Those are all about just getting your brain to stop paying attention to some kind of threat signal that it's getting, and for good or bad. Like that threat signal can just be silly threat signal, right?
Silly threats.
Silly threats.
We want to avoid the silly threats.
So desensitize, right? Then we also think, hey, have I done a good job of getting blood flow to this tissue? Am I getting the garbage out of this tissue, right? The congestion. So one of the things that we see is that, oftentimes people will have a little painful spot, put them on a bike, get the quads pumped with blood, and then I'm like, how's your knee feel? And they're like, it feels great.
Yeah.
Because we've just rushed a ton of blood flow to the area and we've removed congestion from the area.
Interesting. So
Right?
if you are a runner who is dealing with some sort of injury and maybe running itself is painful, keeping you moving is imperative. It's really important.
Not only is it imperative, but it may be one of the ways where we can tell your brain, don't be threatened here, right? So what happens if I just briskly walk? Doesn't hurt. Well, give me a little brisk walk until you start to feel covered in sweat. Then let me see what happens. And it may be that all that happened is that you warmed up, started to put blood flow back into this dry tissue. Let's just call it, right? So perfusion is the next step, but this decongestion of getting out sometimes the swelling, sometimes what ends up happening is that we train really hard, and to be totally frank, most of us, even the average runner, and I run, I don't look like it, but I'm a runner, is that we often don't manage the adaptation to that stress. We don't keep moving, we have to jump in a car or sit at a board meeting, right? I don't do any soft tissue work at night when I get home. I just, basically redline. Like if we did that to horses, horses die. That's why they race horses and then they walk horses around, right? Like the old saying of you run hard, put away wet. That was an old idea that if you wanted to give a horse pneumonia, you raced it and then just put it back in the barn, still sweaty. That horse is going to get sick and is pretty fragile.
Interesting.
Right? That's us, because I got to get my workout in at lunch, right? So one of the things that happens sometimes is that we just have tissues that are a little bit congested. They haven't been moved enough. One of the things that we think can really help your running is actually to try to get 10 to 12,000 steps a day in addition to your running. And the reason we do that is to improve blood flow and to decongest the tissues.
So after your runs and your workouts, if you can be on your feet throughout the day,
Yes.
if you can go for a walk later in the day.
It doesn't matter. Walk the stairs. Go. Just how do you get more movement in? So suddenly we look at this as this non-exercise activity. I've got training, and what we think is, I've run. I don't need to move anymore today, right? I've done my run. I'm just going to sit on the couch. And then what I want you to do is say, hey, can I move a little bit more? And oftentimes that decongestion is the same reason we're using compression, the same reason we're using a voodoo floss, high levels of compression socks, right? Using a device to create muscle contraction, that kind of technology. even jumping into the Normatec boots that you see at all the fairs and races. Those are all ways to decongest the tissue. Let's get more blood flow in, and more importantly, let's remove any sort of garbage and congestion, right? Like if I jumped off the airplane, landed in a new city, a lot of people want to go for a run right away, right? Their tissues are really swollen. Look at your cankles; they don't look great. So instead, give me a long walk, and then maybe do some little intervals at the end once you've done some moving, decongesting.
You can start to move it better.
That third piece is what we say reperfusion. And reperfusion is really shorthand for, hey, do I have a ton of good blood flow in those tissues, right? So, oftentimes someone will have like a painful calf area or Achilles, and if we just do a bunch of toe walking, right? Things that look like your normal warm-up, and we just get the calves pumped up and full of blood, they stop hurting. So how do we improve microcirculation and blood flow? Well, movement is the obvious one, right?
And that brings blood flow in specifically.
That's right. Activates, but you can't believe the number of small, like when we work in Major League Baseball or even the military, sometimes guys will have little elbow problems, right? And so what we do is we have them do stupid band pushdowns, right? And they just do 100 of these little band pushdowns, and guess what happens? Their elbows get full of blood and they stop hurting. So how can we just get all of the groceries to the system? So many ways to do that.
So many times runners get into trouble from movement, right? They've run, they've moved, their body starts to hurt, and what you're really saying is that the way to fix it is with movement as well.
Yeah, we shouldn't be afraid to keep moving is the key. So ultimately telling my brain it's not a threat. Can I desensitize? Can I improve the environmental health by saying, hey, do I have a really healthy tissue here? And oftentimes we just make a mistake because our lives get busy, so our tissues are a little congested.
Yeah.
Third is that improving blood flow to the system really is effective.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, if you do one of those things, your pain goes away. You do two of those things, you're killing it. Three of those things, now you're looking like a professional athlete. And what you'll see is that the same thing that we're using to desensitize you and to improve your experience around your body is the same thing we're doing to have you set Olympic records or personal bests in your age division.
I love it. Well, Kelly, thank you for going through these different things with us. I think that's some really tangible tips for us runners to fix ourselves. Guys, definitely check out the videos and content that the Ready State is putting out all the time, both on YouTube and on Instagram. If you want to see more fun videos with the two of us, we just did a video, great conversation around pain and injury, what pain really means. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an injury. You get the gist. Get into there, and we'll keep filming, guys. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next video. Boom.